This is Gregory Q. Jenkins from Quintasia Studios again, and this is the Quintasia Podcast. Now, today, ladies and gentlemen, is a very special day for us. For those of you who follow us on social media, and even at times on this podcast, you have heard me talk about the story about how all this began. I mentioned that I had written a script and that I had posted it on stage32.com, and that an actor had, and producer I might add, saw the script and got in touch with me. Well, today, ladies and gentlemen, on our broadcast, we have the said actor and producer who saw the script and really started me on this odyssey that I now am on. So please welcome to the Quintasia Podcast, Mr. James Adam Tucker. Sir, how are you?
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm glad to be here. Love to talk about this stuff, and once you get me started, I always keep going, so I love it.
Well, good. So that works out for a podcast. So we, we're building a community of people who are passionate about entertainment, and also with an eye towards social justice as well. I don't want to downplay that element of what we do as well, but today we're going to be focused on really the origins of you will, of how this got started. And and we'll talk about a whole bunch of other things. So we're excited to have you on board. One thing I wanted to do, I don't want to be remiss, and I did forget to bring this up, but I just want people to get an idea of, I am going to, if you will indulge me, I wanted to read your bio that you have on stage 32. Because because it is, I want people to get an idea of, okay, what I was thinking when I saw that I had an email from this individual. So let me just briefly read this bio. James Adam Tucker is a union actor who has appeared in numerous film and television productions. Some of his acting in credits include Book Club, Criminal Minds, The Mindy Project, Mistresses, Odds Are, The Other Wife, Tournament, Training Day, The Brittany Murphy Story, He Watches Over Me, Within These Walls, Beverly Hills 90210, Hunter, Surviving the Hunt, Criminal Intent, Superior Court, and Hairspray. James Adam Tucker is also an independent filmmaker. James attended college in Maryland at Morgan State University, where he studied film, television, and radio production. He received a Bachelor of Arts degree and the award for the most outstanding student in television. Tucker won Best Feature Film for Eat Your Heart Out at the 2008 Backseat Film Festival. At the 2005 Big Apple Film Festival and the Key West Film Festival, Tucker's film Baby Fat won Best Feature Film. Over the years, he has written, directed, and or produced over 20 direct-to-DVD feature films such as Within These Walls, Aunt Rose, Skinned Alive, Pink Eye, Locust 4, Life, Cain and Abel, and Lunatic. Many of his films are available on the internet at Netflix and Amazon. So I took the time to read that, because when I read that, I want people to know what I was thinking when
Mhm.
I saw the email from you, because I do occasionally get emails from folks from time to time. And a lot of times these are people who are, starting out in the business and maybe not necessarily, have the, don't have all the acting credits. But when I noticed that you had reached out, I said, well, wait a minute, this is a person who who's done some work in the business. And I was, wow, like how did this happen? So we're gonna get into the story a little bit more as we
All right.
go on. But first, I'm gonna start out by saying, what advice, or asking, I should say, what advice would you give to young actors starting out today?
Well, the first advice I always like to give, because a lot of times young people, they look and they see actors and they hear the stories of where someone with no experience or just starting out just comes up with the idea, oh yeah, I want to be an actor, and they become an actor and they become successful. So they hear those one in a million stories, which unfortunately happens, not unfortunately, but happens a lot. And so they start to think that it is that easy, and it's not. I always tell them you need to get some type of training, and good training, not just any training, not with somebody who's just doing lessons and, doesn't really have that much of a background. For instance, here's one quick little story. My nephew, actually my wife's nephew, he had, and this was about, I can't even remember, I can't remember what it was, 5 or 6 years ago. So he was in college and he told my wife that he wanted to leave, and because he was interested in acting and he didn't know where to go. So she told me that, and I started thinking, and I thought, okay, when I was his age, where did I want to go? And I wanted to go to the actor's studio in New York, and he already lived in New York. So I told him, I said, you know what you need to do? You need to go over there, go through there. I guess they have a walkthrough or whatever, and find out about it. And I said, that's where you need to go to school. It's expensive, but that's the place for you to go. So he went over there. He talked to them, and they gave him the seminar kind of thing, and da 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 da. And he went to it, and he struggled, and he got the money from his parents and relatives, and he went to the program. And now, fast forward 5 years later, his name is Ian Duff, and he's a successful working actor. So way surpassed me already. So, but that's what I always tell people: get some serious training, because this is not a business where you can just walk in and think your good looks or your sex appeal is gonna do it for you. It may get you in that door, but it won't keep you in there and keep you working. So that's what I tell them. The training is important. The actor studio is a great place, but that's not the only place. There's a lot of places. And I don't know why it is. I think because of New York's theater background is why they have so many good acting programs that have been around for a long time, not just ones that you know actors who are out of work start up and start teaching classes and workshops and stuff. And there's nothing wrong with that for a short term. But if you're just starting out and you want some serious training, you need to go to a serious program and take it serious. That's what I tell them, and that's what he did. And he's got he's been in a number of movies, a number of TV shows, and he right now is on the air with I think it's called the Republic of Sarah, and he's the
Mm.
co-lead. Yeah, and he's a talented young actor. So training is the key.
Well, there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who are aspiring actors, and I know we have quite a few following the podcast, there's some sage advice for you on what you can do and how you can propel your career forward. So, as I mentioned at the top of the podcast, I I wrote the Null Hypothesis as a screenplay. And that's how it started out in its original form. I wrote it in 2018, or at least I completed it in 2018, and it was a horrible time in my life at that time. I mean, my business venture at the time went completely belly up. So, and I lost everything, and that's not hyperbole. I mean everything.
Mhm.
So this was kind of a, you know, just And I hope she doesn't mind. One of the characters that
Mm,
I haven't introduced yet, which is going to be introduced when we do the full series, is this character named Sheila. Sheila DeFord. Sheila DeFord is actually based off of my cousin, and is I won't say her name now, so she won't kill me, because I didn't really I really didn't discuss the fact that I would be talking about her on the podcast, so I won't say her name just yet. But this character, well, my cousin, I should say, she is the one that would always say, as I would tell her, my exploits in my previous attempts to find love, if you will, in my days, said, you should do something with this, because I would have her cracking up. And, you know, what are you going to do? You're unemployed, life's really crappy. So I sat down and I wrote a screenplay. I wasn't planning on doing anything with it. I have written since I was 12 years old. I can't tell you how many screenplays I have started. I had never finished one. And I mean,
oh,
I had started, like every amateur out there, I've started a zillion of them. I would get to like page 20, 25, be totally disgusted by what I wrote, and would never touch it. This one, I wrote it to the end. I was still disgusted, but I kept working on it. And then I got it to the place where I was not as disgusted as I was with the first draft. Um, and I just put a log line. And for those of you who are not in the biz, log line is just, when you see those little descriptions of what the movie is about, in a world where such and such happens, it's something like that. So I put the log line out there. And on stage32.com, which I'll be talking about them in another episode, because they're a big part of this story too. Um, and James saw it and got in contact with me. And from there we began to talk, and now we've come full circle where which we're going to talk about today. I'm going to be introducing a character, which I'm hoping that Mr. Tucker will, be available and will play this part. But I will talk about the original screenplay. If you, it's been a bit now since you read it, but what about that screenplay interested you?
I can't remember, and I know you probably do. I can't remember what the log line was, but obviously that was the first thing that got my attention. At that time in my life, I was obsessed with trying to put together. There's this festival called oh God, it's oh God, well, it's a
Series
festival
Fest, right?
for Series Fest. Thank you, thank you. It's a
Yes.
festival for television series, and I was just completely obsessed at that time with putting something together for that. But from over the years of all my experience, I knew I needed a good story. That's always the first thing, because I have equipment, I have resources to actually produce stuff, not financial resources, but equipment resources, and I can edit and all that kind of stuff. And so I have all the gear and everything. So I always look for projects that I think, as they say in the business, have legs where
Mm.
it can continue. But I can't remember what your log line was, but that's what caught my idea. What was your original log line?
I don't even remember it myself. It's
But
still
that's
up.
what.
It's still up on
Oh,
stage
okay, okay.
32. So if
All right,
people
all
want
right, all right.
curious, they can still see
They
it.
can look and see. But
Yeah.
that's what really caught my attention. And so I started reading it. And what I do normally when I'm looking at a project or script, I tell myself, okay, you're going to read the first 10 pages. And I usually don't tell the writer that, but I tell myself that I'm going to read the first 10 pages and see what I think. And so I started reading it 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, and I kept going, because what really attracted me to it was that, number one, the dialogue was real. A lot of times you get stories where people, because it's difficult to write. When writers start working, they find out quickly that it's difficult to write how people really talk. So that, uh, and to keep the characters unique, because each character can't speak the same. Each, just like in real life, all three of us don't have the same speech pattern. So when I started reading and I said, oh, okay, his characters are unique. The dialogue sounds believable. And what you were talking about, I knew you really knew about. That's what really attracts me. I know it's a cliche, but that's really, when you do your first script, it's always good to write about something you really know. I know. I mean,
Yes.
once you get successful, you can write about anything. But when you start out, and it seemed to me that you knew these characters. So that's what also made it real, because that's what I tried to do, when I would write my, as I call it, my B movies. So I would, even though I was writing a B movie, I never treated it like a B movie. I pretended in my mind I was writing an A film. And so I would make characters that were three-dimensional and had unique voices. But that's what I saw in your script. And as I continued to read it, like I said, I knew it was a feature film, but then I was like, hey, this could be a series, because each one of these characters, we could learn about their lives. That's what I love. What draws me to series is that a good series, you can take those characters and you can put them anywhere. Like, say, for instance, the characters in The Sopranos. You could literally take those characters and take them and put them as working in a firehouse. Tony could have been the captain. Could have been. So you could take, that's what makes the stories interesting. The characters are what we watch. The people are what we have the connection with. Even though he was a bad guy, you were connected to him because you could see he had a family and he loved his wife and his daughter and his son, and he was respected by his friends, and he actually liked them too, to some degree. But those people could be anywhere, and so your people in your script gave me that same feeling that I could take those people and we could put them in any environment, and the story is about them, and the environment is just, as they say, the universe that they're in. But that's what drew me to it, was the realistic dialogue, and the characters were all unique, and how they spoke, and how that their dialogue was real, because that really attracts me. And one thing you didn't have too, which a lot of new writers have, too much direction. As far as in the the scene direction. Sometimes I have blocks. There's only one person that can get away with that, and that's Quentin Tarantino. He'll have a block of he'll have a page of description about what the scene goes on before you even get to his page of dialogue. But see, that's why, for instance, somebody like him, the way he made it was to make that first movie himself. No one in Hollywood would have greenlit Reservoir Dogs. It wasn't like they would have looked at it and, what's this? What is this guy writing? Is this a novel or is this a script? But yeah, he's the only one that can do that. But a lot of new writers do that, and you didn't have that. You had good amount of screen direction to get the point across and to set it up, and then you went right into the dialogue, and each scene seemed to have what I liked, what somewhat of a beginning, middle, and end. It didn't start. It didn't, and it also, what I liked too was when you moved, your pacing was good. What I liked too was that when I went to the next scene, it didn't have to start with somebody walking in the door or getting out the car. It could start with the scene in progress, and that's another sign of good writing and good storytelling. So that's something good that I could see, and I thought it was good enough to reach out and talk to you and see if I could twist your arm into making it into a series.
Well, obviously, I'm glad you put the bug in my ear, because I started, and thank you for all of that, by the way. And I want you to know that it was really your encouragement plus a friend of mine. Because again, I had no intention of doing anything with this script. I was just happy that I finished it, and then just put it out there in the universe and move on. But your reaction and a friend of mine's reaction told me that, well, wait a minute now. There looks like there's something here, to use the phrase that you used earlier, that something has legs here, and that we could do something with this possibly. Where we are now, ladies and gentlemen. So we started out, you may have seen the prequel episodes on YouTube or Facebook, but the story now is, and the reason why I decided to do those prequel episodes is because I knew I had never done, the only time I did anything production wise on this side of the entertainment business was meaning acting, was in high school and stuff like that. I participated in productions and both as talent and crew, and but really never went beyond the script writing or the script starting. I can't really call it script writing because I never finished it. I never did anything that I was more on the music side of the business. That's where I had done about 10 years plus worth of work because I'm also a musician. And I was trying to promote. I was doing the Carlos Santana thing, and I wrote songs, and then I would find people who could actually sing because I cannot sing, ladies and gentlemen, to sing my songs. But so this was new, and I said I don't have a clue of you know what I'm doing. So I really need to, and I've never recruited, I've recruited dancers, I've recruited singers, but I haven't recruited, and more importantly, I haven't directed actors. But in order to get this project done, that's all the stuff that I had to do. So my concept was, and the first time I came up with this concept is in an email that I had sent to you, James, where I said, um, I told you I was going to. I wrote the pilot script. I took the feature. I rewrote it as the pilot script. I sent that to you. Um, but where we left it was, well, this is great. This is good, but we didn't feel like okay we had enough to bring it forth as it was written, because they had a scene in the airport and all that, and then it starts to get kind of pricey
Yes.
to shoot stuff like that. That's the other
Right.
thing that I've learned, ladies and gentlemen, is your set pieces, and if you're on a budget, you might not want to go for the airport scene. You might want to go
Right.
for something you could be near the airport or something like that. That's a
Right.
little that's a little cheaper to shoot. But anyway, so I came up with this idea of shooting these 5 short webisodes, if you will. Well, it wasn't going to be 5; it was going to be a lot more than 5. But and which was a way for me, and this would be really the backstory of before the series started. And the purpose of these episodes was for one, from base to quite frankly, for me to get practice at pulling together cast and crew, looking at the chemistry of the cast and crew, and seeing what worked and what didn't work. And all of that did happen. So now, fast forward to where we are now. The story is going to change when we launch the official show, and you're going to say, well, Greg, when is that going to happen? Well, the truth, as it is in this business, we got to get the money together first, and that's where we are right now. So I can't tell you when it's going to happen just yet, but believe you me, when it does happen, I'll be the first one shouting about it. Um, so now, part of the character's backstory. So let me fill people in on a little bit, on a little thing. So there are 4 lead characters in this story, and they all work for a company. I'm going to rename part of the name because one of the names that I was using is probably too prominent of a name that any lawyer would ever advise me to try to use it. So we'll just say Donaldson. This character's name is Charlie Donaldson, and that's the character which you didn't see in the prequels that I do want to now launch in the actual series, and that's the character I'm hoping that James will play. Now, this
Mhm.
character he is the boss of the 4 leads: Kevin, Sarah, Trinity, and I'm forgetting my own characters' names. Kevin, I gotta do them in order. Kevin, Sarah, Trinity, and of course, how could I forget Cassandra? Yes, that's the 4th one. So he kind of the way I'm thinking of the story now. This character Donaldson, or Charlie Donaldson, he is, I mean, they all work for him at his company, and he thinks these guys are special as a unit. He kind of brought them together as a unit, and he encouraged them. He knew that they wanted to have their own thing, and we're going to learn about what a captive is, but he encourages them to go and create their own company. But truly, that company is a captive of his, meaning that he's the main client, so he kind of still runs things even over there. But like with all children, with their parents or their proteges, you get to a point where you want to break off from your protege and you want to do different. And that's where we enter the story now, is where this friction starts. with Charlie, but Charlie's going to be a recurring character because he's kind of like a guidepost of where those characters are in their story arc. And that's how I see that kind of rolling out. And I know I'm blabbing on here, but I want to give people an idea of the story and the importance that none of this, if you walk away with nothing from this conversation, none of this happens without the email from James. So I
Mhm.
can't I can't stress that enough, and that's why I'm so happy that you decided to come on our podcast.
All right.
Let me ask you this. So how did you get your start in the industry?
I was in college in Maryland, and I went to Morgan State University. And I think right before college or during college, I decided that I was always interested in theater and acting, but I never really took a chance at it. And so once I was in college, I was in an environment, totally different. I'm from New Jersey, so I was in Maryland. I was away from home, and I was in a totally different environment. And I started being around some of the theater students. So I decided to start doing some, extra work around town. I had my major was film and television production, but I also had an unofficial minor in theater. And so I found out about a play. I did a play in town in Maryland at the Arena Players. And then a film came to town from a local filmmaker named John Waters. And so he did a
Mm.
casting announcement in Backstage. And so I was like a faithful reader of Backstage. So I submitted my headshot and resume and didn't hear anything. So then my girlfriend at the time, which is my wife, she 2 weeks that went by and she said, well, you should submit it again. And I was like, no, you can't do that. And so then I said, okay, let me just listen to it. So I submitted it again. The next day they called me in and I went in and I read for this part of a police officer. No, I went in and read for a part of, can't remember what the part was, but it wasn't the part I got. So then about 2 days later, they called me back and asked me if I wanted to play a police officer. So I said definitely yes, and they gave me the lines and And then next week I went in and I shot it, and it's the movie Hairspray, the original one that John Waters shot in Baltimore. So there's a scene in the movie where the woman whose daughter is dating the black guy, she's Caucasian, and the daughter's black, and the daughter's white, and the boyfriend is black. So she's looking for her daughter. So she goes to the black neighborhood and she gets out of the cab and she's going to the black neighborhood and everybody she meets, she's afraid of. And because she's never been to the black neighborhood and she's running down the street. She gets scared. She starts freaking out and she sees a police car. And so she's like, oh, great. So she runs to the police car and she leans down, she looks in and she says, and then the man in the car says, yes, ma'am, can I help you? And then that's me. And she sees a black police officer and she screams and runs away. And so that was my very first SAG movie with my first line, yes, ma'am, can I help you? And I was so happy. And so I got that. And then I got my I got my SAG card because there's a thing in the union where you can only get in if you're you can only do union work if the producers really need you. If they say they can't find anybody else, it's called Taft-Hartley. And so that's how I got Taft-Hartley into the union. And I had to walk their production office was all the way on the other side of, I don't know if anybody knows how far, Baltimore's not really that big, but our campus was in Morgan State. Was like, God, it was far away, but I knew I had to take the bus, but the buses didn't go where their production office was. So I had to walk over 3 miles once I got off the bus to their remote production office to get my Taft-Hartley document signed. And the guy said, you sure you want to do this? You want to join the union? You won't be able to do any non-union work. And I said, yes, please sign it. So he signed it, and then I got in SAG and was so happy. And that began a 30-year trek of struggling as an actor. But no, it was a good feeling to do that, that first role, have a trailer, have people putting your hair and makeup and getting you all ready and dressed in your uniform. It was a period piece too. So I had a period cop uniform, period cop car, and it was a great day.
Well, John Waters himself is a legend
Yes.
in the business, and so it's interesting that that was your first production that you were on,
Yep.
and you're
Yep.
sort of following in that footsteps of making that genre or that type of film. So,
Yep,
I,
that was my original plan. When I started, which I kind of diverted my acting career into when I started making films. you know how it is act. Some if acting wasn't going quickly, I started to think about independent films I could make, and that's kind of how I split. And I kind of think that was a road that's another little piece of advice, like you asked me before, that I would give people. Focus, focus, because that's what that kind of split me, I think. Because whenever my acting slowed down, I would start doing B movies, and I thought that was going to be a door into A movies, but that door never opened. You know, so I made a lot of B movies, and you know, some of them got distributed by Lionsgate and Bella Vista Pictures and stuff like that, and they made all the money. But it didn't. You need to focus in this business. It really is good to focus on what your primary goal is, and that's another thing I tell people as young actors. You know, focus on it. It might be a difficult road, but you need to keep focused and do everything you can to improve your skills, your audition ability, you know, all those kind of things. And just like I tell them too, a lot of times you think, oh, I don't need to go to classes and stuff like that. It's not the fact of just going to the classes because you're learning something. It's keeping your acting ability sharp and polished. You know, even I neglect it sometimes. Even now, to this day, I need to be going out there and working out, because you look at any sports athlete or they're great, but they still practice. And that's the same thing an actor needs to know. You know, you can't just, okay, yeah, I'm good. I'm ready to go. I'm ready to get those union jobs and work with Martin Sheen and whoever, you know, but you need to keep practicing. And that's why the athletes do the same thing. You know, they don't just, you know, when they're not football season, they don't just kick back, you know, or basketball or baseball or whatever the sport is or whatever the skill is. You got to keep sharp.
And that's my philosophy. You know, we had talked about this, you know, earlier in a previous discussion that, you know, I recognize that, you know, you know, was an amateur writer, but I wanted to be a professional writer. And just like any other professional, you know, writers write. So,
Yes.
and it's the one part of this business where you don't need anybody to give you permission to do it. You
Right.
can just go and write it. It's not like, you know, producing is a little different. You do have to have some money, or some resources to do it. But writing, as long as you got some kind of medium to capture your words, you can write. But there's things about story structure and all, and that's what I'm in now. It just so happens that even through high school, I took a ton of creative writing classes. So I
Great.
guess that's probably where whatever I do understand about story structure comes from, is from that early foundation. But now I'm building upon that. And, you know, same for me is, you know, you got to constantly practice. I'm going to take a quick pause here, ladies and gentlemen. For those of you who may not have joined us at the top of the podcast, this is the Quintasia podcast, and we are talking today with actor producer James Adam Tucker. We're going to continue our conversation now. For those of you, I should say, who are audience members of our podcast, you know how we roll. This is our management team asking questions of our guests. So I'm going to now turn the rest of the conversation over to our CTO, Harv Latko, who will continue this great conversation. Harv, take it away.
James, pleased to meet you. I did see you sometimes go by Adam as well.
Yes, I do. When I started my career, I always used Adam Tucker, and maybe like 10 years ago, I had to go to my formal first name also and add that on, because I noticed in SAG, for some reason, a lot of women started naming their kids Adam Tucker, and they were starting to slowly appear when I would do Google searches. And even so, I figured out, you know what, I better use my full name now, so no one won't miss me.
That's good. So, and thank you. You know, your reference about the character. Now, Greg and I know each other quite a bit, and I'm quite a character, as you'll get to find out, and as Greg will attest. And when we started talking about, you know, the work, I helped him out early on, just sort of stumbled across it in a different line of work. And so we started talking about, you know, dream roles and what would you like to do? So that's how I came to become a part of Quintasia.
Oh,
If you could create your own dream role, what would that look like?
and it's funny when I thought about that, I said when you say that, well, the first thing that pops into my mind are the roles that I'm mostly cast in, are police officers or detectives or the principal or the business owner, somebody in authority. Like I said, I go all the way back to my first role as the police officer. And the funny thing about all that is that that was my first career choice. When I was in high school, that's the road I wanted to go down. I was in junior ROTC for the Air Force, and I had my plan all mapped out. I was going to go into the Air Force, work as military police, get out and become a police officer and become a detective in New York City. And so that was but I got diverted. You know how life is, things change and I completely got diverted, didn't go into the Air Force and never went into law enforcement. Funny thing is, I did work for 2 years before college as a private investigator for Pinkerton in New Jersey, but I never really saw my police background come to fruition. But I got to play it in a much safer way as an actor. But that would be my dream role as a detective. And like Greg mentioned, I have this whole character developed. I never completed the script for him, but I have his whole bio. I've actually even written scripts for other characters around his what I call universe of a private investigator. And what I did was I picked up as if in I graduated high school and it was 81. Wow. And that year I started working for Pinkerton as a private investigator, doing marital investigations and surveillance, this young kid doing it. And they trained me by watching videotapes. They trained me by watching the 1.5-hour videotape on how to do surveillance. And I was doing marital investigations and stuff. But my character is picked up from if I never left that field. And that's who I became, a private investigator, over a 30-year career. And that's the character that I still dream of one day bringing to life and playing that character. A private investigator with a shingle, not back to the, to the 40s type character, but a real world one. Because there's the investigators, and I've met a few over the years, in the downtimes of my working career. I've worked as a security officer. So met a number of private investigators, and there's great stories. I mean, there's just so many great stories. It's real world stuff. Most of the stuff is just sitting around watching people. It's not as exciting as what you see on television, but there are great, and that would be my character, to tell the story of what real private investigators do. Obviously I had to spice it up a bit for television, but that's my dream character.
Yeah.
We should talk because I similarly did surveillance in the sort of late 70s.
Oh, okay.
And I have some really good stories. As Greg will tell you, I have a ton of stories, but
yeah.
And everything was great until I got shot at, and then it wasn't so pleasant. but we'll leave that for another day. I'm doing surveillance, and somebody takes a shot at me, so but it'll make a good story. But
yes.
So it seems like you've been a bit typecast in a sort of authority, sort of police, surveillance. That could be viewed as either positive or negative. Do you think you've been negatively, positively, or at all affected by your typecasting or potentially being typecast?
No, I don't. I think I kind of enjoy, like I said, I'm probably a rare person who enjoys that type of being thought of as that kind of law enforcement or authority figure as an actor. And I enjoy that because like I said, was what I was early as a kid drawn to as far as for a career. So I get to play that, that role in a really, like you said, shot at in a safe environment, and that's what one time I told my daughter, she asked me, why do I like being an actor and continue to go through the struggle of being an actor? And I said, because that's when I'm at my freest, when I can really be me. Because you can, within the framework of the character, I can let the real me out. Like you can say things as the character that you can't say in real life. You can do things as the character that you can't do in real life. So that's the freedom and that's the joy. That's what, when I'm on set and I do stuff, you keep it within the range of the character, but you can be the person that, that the bad side of me maybe too. I played a lot of bad characters younger, played a lot of criminals. And so that's real freeing. That's why when actors say they love playing the bad guy, because they can do, you have no bounds. You're not bound by, the rules that we set up in society, because you are the bad guy. You are the reason that the hero is coming to you're the reason the hero is there, So I played a lot of bad guys when I was younger. But I still enjoy that too, and I would gravitate towards a role like that too. But no, as far as typecasting goes, I love the characters that people see me, and that's the thing. That's the thing that a lot of actors and young actors don't realize too. When you're first starting out, especially nowadays with casting, as soon as you walk through the door, or unfortunately now, as soon as you turn in your self-tape, which I've been doing a lot of recently, as soon as they look at it, they want to see the person that fits that role, and that's typecasting. And that's, like I say, when you're starting out, you're always going to be, okay, yeah, he looks like a lawyer. No, he looks like the janitor. He looks like a doctor. And that's how you get in the door. And then once you get in the door, and if you have the ability to play those different roles, you can do that. So no, I don't really feel that there's a big problem. I wonder, sometimes years ago when I read this story about Stallone. He was already Stallone as we know him now, but he was maybe 20 years younger, and he was complaining because he was typecast. And I was like, God, I wish I could just grab you by the collar and jack you up. You're complaining because you're typecast? What are you doing? It's like crazy, or like Clint Eastwood. Basically, Clint Eastwood all his life, he's a great actor, but basically Clint Eastwood played the same character, and he had no problem with that. He was just a different version of Clint Eastwood. And that's where, because everybody can't be an Al Pacino or a Meryl Streep who can, or who can blend into everything you give them. Mostly the great actors are versions of themselves. And you have to embrace that, because like this great book of this coach from LA that I read, and I just dog-eared it and keep reading it over and over again. It's The Best of You. And that's what you have to bring as an actor. So if that makes you a typecast, if you're the best cop, good. You're the best guy. Get in there and do it. You're the best. You're the best taxi driver character. So no, I don't buy into that. No.
I recall as growing up, and maybe it's a generational thing that you sort of missed it. I remember the story over and over again when I was growing up about the original Superman.
Oh, yeah.
And basically, I heard this story because I was around a little bit of theater and filmmaking at an early age. And I remember somebody telling me the story, if you go down the road of typecasting, you could either be wildly successful or you could box yourself in. Now, Greg, I don't know if you know the story of the original Superman or not, but the actor who played the original, and I should know it off the top of my head, but I don't. He played the original Superman in the TV series, and every time he went to go for another job, he'd never get it because the world knew him as Superman. And
George Reeves?
Yes, that's exactly it. And the story is, now I haven't read the story myself, but I heard the story. He ended up committing suicide, as I recall, correct?
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah. And then also the thing that you said, that there's a dark side of it. I just watched a documentary about Adam West, and if any actors out there should watch that too, because that's the real dark side of being typecast. He couldn't get anything else after being Batman in the '60s, and I mean, he's just started, maybe like 10 years ago, getting stuff like voiceover stuff and things like that. But no, that was it. That was it. And that happens to children a lot too, children actors. That's why, I would never tell people to put their little kids into acting, because it's the rare child actor that turns out to be a Ron Howard, So it's like, it's tough for kids, because if you think about it, and I do demo scenes for actors. I shoot demo reels. And one time I was doing a scene for an actor in Los Angeles, and he told me, he said, and I didn't know who he was. He said, and I still don't know who he was. I can't remember his name, but he said, I used to be a child actor, and he was just starting over again. Now he's about in his 30s, and he said the most difficult part for me once it was over was I had to realize that everybody didn't like me, on the set. when he's a successful actor, everybody likes you. And, everybody treats him nice. He can do whatever he wants, blah, blah, blah. He said the hardest thing was realizing that, that wasn't the real world,
That was an act.
Everybody was nice. Everybody loved him. And, once it was over, it was over, But there are some you're right. There are dark stories. And that's another thing, too, that I would like to tell musicians, actors, anybody in the business. While you're successful, don't just stick with thinking that success is going to last forever. Branch out, start doing some other stuff. Nowadays, a lot of musicians do it. And even a lot of actors do it now. While they're successful, they start building small production companies. They start, they start directing, they start writing, they start doing something else in the creative field while anybody will take your call, just like Brad Pitt has his plan B. I mean, his career is not going to end, but just like he was smart though, because it could have, it could have dried up, but he had started his production company and now he's doing more productions than he is acting, and even same thing with, who's the actor, Ryan Reynolds. He has a really successful online production company doing corporate videos and commercials and stuff. And so he doesn't have to do that, but he's smart because, you're not going to stay on top forever. Nobody's going to stay on top forever. No one's going to be the A-lister always. So I tell actors, if you get in that position, start planting some seeds for other things that you can do. It can be related in the business and it doesn't have to be related in the business, Like Magic Johnson, he has, once he got out of basketball, he started opening up all these kind of businesses, coffee, movie theaters, just all crazy stuff, but he'll never be without a income, So don't just, and a lot of actors, then you have the stories again too on the other side where musicians think it's going to last forever, and it's not. They just spend their money like crazy and don't start any other kind of business or any kind of way to make money outside of their fame and recognition. But it's a tightrope, but it's a good tightrope. You don't have to fall off. It's like, you just have to be smart. You have to be smart.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. So, a little bit about me, you said typecasting, and as you were talking, I've often similarly been mistaken for a cop or a figure of authority. I mean, and I'm not quite sure why. I guess part of it is growing up.
It's the tall thing.
It's a tall. Well, I am.
You're both tall.
Both tall, and so interesting stories about being typecasting. It can sometimes work against you, in real worlds too. Because I'm sure when people, you walk down the street, and maybe they don't remember what production you were in, or maybe they're doing something bad that they shouldn't be doing, and they see you come down the street. I remember I was on a trip one time with a bunch of people, and let's say they were, not well documented. We'll leave it at that. So, in this current climate, and I remember at the time, my girlfriend said to me, I said, why are these people behaving so strange around me? She says, well, they think you might be ice. And so we live in a culture where it's diversified and inclusive, and I live my life that way. That's part of the reason why I'm here in Tasia. But it was interesting to see when I just thought I was being friendly and nice and everything. They were actually scared that I was going to come and take them away. So have you had anything like that in your
Well, the only thing, one funny story that I tell sometimes is that when I started dating my wife, she was working at working in the public relations at the Baltimore Orioles. So one time she invited me to go to an after game party at this club that it really was a club / restaurant. But anyway, all the Orioles players were there. So I'm tall, and so I walked in. I'm with her, and she left me, and she went to talk to some friends, and I'm sitting at the bar, and then all of a sudden, two young women come, one on the right, one on the left, just like shoulder touching me. Oh, hi, who are you? What is this? Da, 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 da. They thought I was a baseball player. They thought I was one of the baseball players. I was like, no, I'm just here with my fiance, Patricia. And they're like, oh, okay, okay. So they were like, as soon as she walked away, they were right on me. So it's just like, people assume when you're tall sometimes, and I was young at that time, obviously, that you're a sports figure or something. I still get it, even though I'm old. That people look at me and they're like, do I recognize him? And that's a funny thing too, because he mentioned being tall. Sometimes my height over my career, that has been a thing that has held me back a bit too, because most actors and actresses are, average height. So me being so tall, that's been one of my stumbling blocks too. But yeah, it's funny how people, and that's one thing too about actors too that they need to realize too. One of the first things you need to realize as an actor, what is your type, so that you can play towards that. Like I said, to get in the door, you may want to move away from that later, but you want to play towards what people think you are already, what you fit. Because, a lot of times, especially on television, when the smaller roles, what they call under five, say, for instance, you're hired to be a lawyer, they want somebody that looks right off the bat like a lawyer. As soon as you look at them, that's the lawyer. As soon as you look at them, that's the judge, that kind of thing. So those are the things actors need to know. What is my type? And sometimes you have to ask that opinion from other people. And there's actually a sheet that that in some acting classes do it, which is a good experience. The teacher passes them out to, and I've done it in some of the classes I've taught. The teacher passes each of the actors' sheet out, and then all the other actors fill in what they see them as. And people are shocked sometimes how other people perceive them, because you don't even see yourself that way. And it's good to know how people see you, because that helps you guide you towards what characters you can play strong as and be believable as you're starting out.
It's an interesting point because, as I look back at some of the actors that I've been exposed to, many of them were very, very, what I would consider short. So when Greg told me that he put together this whole crew and most of the people were tall, I was kind of surprised. And now to hear it from you as well, you see them on the screen or you see them on TV and you think, oh, they're probably such and such a height. And then you meet them in person and they're a lot shorter than you think.
Yes, yes. Like even for years, Arnold Schwarzenegger's height was listed as 6'4" or 6'5", and he's average height. He's like probably 5'9" or something like that, And all those years, his height was inflated. He was already big enough. They didn't have to make him seem even bigger.
And in our case, with our show, it just so happens that the female leads, they're all one has a lot of them have two of them have a dancing background. I know for sure two of them also did modeling. So it just so happens that these ladies were tall. And as a consequence of casting them, yes, I am going to be recasting the role of Kevin, unfortunately. But that's one of the things that I'm going to be looking at, though, is the height of that actor, because I do think it is important in the story. And you now, it's not to say that if an unusually gifted shorter actor came by, it's not like I wouldn't look at them. But visually, I get the thing about looking the part, and I would like that person to be at least at the same height as the rest of the cast. I think shorter would be too much of a visual distraction. So that might be and that's also another reason why, truth be told, that's the good thing about being on the other side, that you can see why people think that way. So you want to talk about authoritarian figures. When I thought of Charlie Dollison, I immediately thought of you, because I do get that authoritarian, the voice, not just the height, but the voice, the mannerisms, how you carry yourself. That's Charlie Dollison. That's who that guy is. So I definitely understand it. It can be both a blessing and a curse, I suppose.
Yeah. But it's made for an interesting career. Like I said, you see people that things move quicker for some, and that's one other thing you have to do. Even myself, you don't want to, as an actor, young actors, don't start comparing yourself to other people. How this happens to this person, that happens. It will drive you crazy. It will drive you crazy. Yes, yes. And I guess it's in a lot of fields too. It's in a lot of fields, especially when you're in a company and someone gets a promotion, and and you're like, oh, I was here for this long. I was passed over. You never know why. Like you said, being behind the table, especially with acting and filmmaking, there's so many reasons. Well, maybe I like somebody with a little bit longer hair, or like her eyes were, her eyebrows were too bushy. Maybe I just like weird, and that's all part of casting. That's all part of this business, and that's why it's a difficult business. Yeah.
I often think about, and again, Greg will tell me, was it, who was the method actor who used to actually take his makeup kit to get the parts? Do you know, very old, in the 30s, I believe it was.
Oh.
And basically, he would see what the casting was, and he sort of had his makeup toolkit, and he would actually go and I'm going to have to dig this up now, because I remember I went to Hofstra University, and so there was a lot of actors and people there, and and I would hear the stories about how the actors broke into the business. And it's a very famous, I want to say Charlie Chaplin, but it wasn't Charlie Chaplin. It was someone like that. And what they used to do is they'd see the casting, and they'd basically walk off set with their makeup box, and they basically tailor their looks so that they would get hired for that part. And I'm going to dig it up. The next time we talk, James, I'll tell you who it was, and you'll say, oh, yes, of course. And they actually taught it in the acting school, which is how I came to find out about it. And, looking the part, speaking this part, I've always found it interesting that when you see something like a foreign actor who speaks with like a Midwestern drawl, or, Southern drawl, or something like that. So that's all part of the craft that everybody practices, right? So some people, I think, can get rid of their speech and reinvent themselves. But as Greg pointed out, I could see from talking to you, you have a very distinctive, authoritative voice. Have you ever done any work where you've had to change your voice or mannerisms a bit?
Well, one thing I do is I have a Nigerian accent that I use. I've been using since college. I was in the play Raisin in the Sun, and I played the Nigerian guy who was dating the main character's daughter. So I had 1 or 2, 3 good scenes, and I learned that accent. This was all before pre-internet. So I when I was in college, there was a Nigerian student who would always ask a lot of questions. And once I was cast in the role, I was like, okay, how am I going to learn this accent? And so what I did was I snuck a little micro cassette recorder into the class and recorded him asking all the questions, and for like a week. And then I studied that tape, and then I perfected my Nigerian accent. So I've used it many times over the years. One of my first roles when I got to Hollywood was on a show. All those court shows they have nowadays with real judges and real plaintiffs. Well, when they first started it, the same guy who produces all the real ones, he had a fake one where he would hire actors, and we would reenact the things, but we would act as if it was real. So I played a Nigerian guy who wanted to marry this woman so that he could stay in America. And so, but that was one of the first times I used my Nigerian accent on screen. But yeah, I accents and things like that. I really love that. I love doing the ones that I'm good at. But it's difficult when they say the thing I have a problem with down here. I'm in Atlanta right now, and I've moved out here for a couple of years to try my hand at acting in their exploding market, and it's going pretty good. But I have I get calls sometimes where it says do regional accents, and that's where I'm weak. I don't even try, because I figure if I get cast, I can learn it. But it's the worst thing is if you do an accent and it's bad. That's going to draw away from anything good you do.
Gotta be careful with the accents, because there have been some very famous actors who've done some work with accents, and it didn't turn out so good.
No.
I'd be remiss, James, because I'm sure the other podcaster listeners here, could you just indulge us a little bit in your Nigerian accent? I know I want to hear it.
Let me see if I can think of. Oh, okay. I'll go back to my. And this is what I use when I rehearse. When I realize. Okay, let me see if I can remember. I don't want to marry Christina to stay in America. I want to stay in America to marry Christina. We were married when I was only 14. Our families put us together. I don't want to live that way anymore. I want to be an American, not live by tribal law.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So, it definitely. I wanted to, and before, because we're running out of time here. I did wanted to one last thing to touch on before we sign off. We talked about um, the importance of, if you're an actor, of having those other avenues, like a lot of you, and I'm starting to see now, if people haven't figured out by now, I'm passionate about getting underrepresented communities more opportunities in the entertainment world. And I'm happy to see young actors like Zendaya and all of them. They've picked up on this message, and they've started their own production companies, and
Right.
they're doing other things. They're building that future for themselves, where they'll have
Yes.
other streams of
Yes.
income. But the specific point I'm thinking about, which I come across, I've had it happen. Um, Not only when you get to that point, but before you get to that point, when you're at an audition. Can you just talk a little bit about the importance of? Because I think it happens with almost every actor. Sometimes you'll go out for a specific role, and you don't get that part. But really, to me, as a producer, I would say to any actor, the point of the audition is not necessarily whether you got that part that you went out for, is did you get noticed during that? Because I might not like you for the part that you read for, but you might
Right.
have made an impression that I'm going to remember. You remember, like, that guy that we saw? Is he available? Can
Right.
we call him in
Right.
here?
Right.
Can you
Right.
talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, that's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up because I struggle with that too. I mean, even after all the years I've been doing this, from casting people myself, sometimes I forget that there's so many variables. And I just read something a few months ago from this other actor about my age. He's out here in Atlanta also. He does posts and he does classes. But what he said was, treat your acting auditions as if you're giving them a free sample of your talent. And that's a great mindset to have because you can't book everything. There's no way you can book everything you go out on, and you can't take it that personal. I know it feels personal. To me, it still feels personal, especially it really feels personal when you're exactly right. Like recently, I went out for a couple of roles when I first got to Atlanta. They wanted somebody tall. They wanted somebody my age, Black male. And to top it off, he had a Nigerian accent. So I was like, okay, I got this. It's a lead role. I just got to town. Didn't hear anything. I mean, I got called in for it, obviously, but did the audition. I thought the audition was good. Didn't hear anything. But there's so many variables, and you can't take it. You'd have to do it. Another great quote is from Bryan Cranston. He said once he let go of the stress and the anxiety of auditioning, he started booking work, and that's what I constantly tell myself that, let it go, do it and let it go. Give them that free sample of your ability and just move on. So it's hard to get that in your mindset as an actor, but if you can, that keeps you going for the long haul. And sometimes it may be a real long haul, like it is for me. But I always joke that I by this age I thought I was going to be washed up and I thought I was going to be successful when I was young, and by this age I'll be washed up and retired by now. But I'm still out there doing it, But yeah, you have to do it and let it go, So just be thankful that you got a chance to do what you love to do and show them your ability, the best that you can do, and just move on to the next one. Because you can't control it. You can't control it,
Right.
Yeah. Just show them, as I said earlier, you show them the best of you, because that's one thing you have that no one else is going to come in there and be able to be you, trying to guess what they want is a waste of time.
Yeah.
It really is a waste of time. You have to do it And another thing I like to say too to actors is at the audition process, that's the chance you have to direct yourself. Read the role, try to figure out how you're going to portray it. How would you do this? And go in there. And hopefully, in LA, I got a chance to go into the room with casting directors, so you could get that feedback. But out here in Atlanta, everything is self-tape. So you got that chance to try to get their attention on tape, and you do the best you can do, and move on to the next one. But it's and I understand the struggle and the anxiety that actors have, because it does feel personal. But you can't. You just have to bypass that. Keep going. Keep going.
Do you think maybe sometimes as you're doing your tapes, do you do sort of your sort of straight and your alter ego and then play it back to see which one you like better? Do you do anything like that?
Sometimes I do. Sometimes I do that. Sometimes I do it. I do a couple of versions, and then but I always know to myself at the end of a couple of versions which one I like the best. And those usually, and it's usually the last one, because after I get a good one, I kind of stop, Because the truth of it is, you can just keep going. You can just keep going on forever. You make a little mistake halfway through, and then you're like, oh, I got to start over again. Da, da, da. That's kind of the beauty of self-tape. But the real downside is that you're not in the room. The people, the casting people can't see your real personality, and that, this is a likable guy. I like to work with him. Because a lot of times over the years, I was casting stuff, and stuff I did in the audition room wasn't even, as far as improvising, wasn't even stuff that was used on the set. And that's what got me the role. That's what got the people in the room to give some kind of reaction, like they would laugh or they would smile. And I always feel the great thing about auditioning in person is that when I get them to laugh, even if it's a drama or a comedy or it's a sarcastic line or whatever, when I get them to laugh, okay, I got them, and now they just have to pass it to whoever the next decision maker is, But yeah, when the room is filled and you get them to laugh, your chances of you just put yourself at the top of the list, and you can't get that. The downside of self-taping nowadays is that you don't get any feedback, so. But it's still a process, and people are still booking off of self-tapes. So you got to take that seriously too, and treat it. That's another quick tip. Treat those self-tape auditions that you get actors out there as if it's a real in-room audition. Don't come unshaven and put your shirt, have a clean shirt on. I usually use this plain background I have. I should have a plainer background, but this is plain enough. Don't have the dogs in the background and the bookcase and the mom with the vacuum cleaner.
Yeah, it definitely, again, putting my producer hat on, I would say to any actors out there listening or experiencing our podcast, I would say to you that, take James's advice to heart, and also take this little piece from me as well. What I'm looking for when I'm casting is, what does the person bring to the role? Yes, all the things that we discussed. Do they look the part? Do I find them believable in the role? But the biggest thing that will get you cast, especially if you're talking about an independent film, the biggest thing that will make you stand out is I'm looking for people who are not going to be a pain in the butt, who are going to be pleasant to work with, who, when we have a 8 a.m. call, are going to be there when they're supposed to be, that we don't have to send people, out looking for them. And that, I won't have cast members coming up to me and say, I can't work with this person anymore. You got to get rid of them. Because nobody wants, it's hard enough to pull a production together without having that kind of drama. So, that's what but the one of the most important things that I look for, who's going to help me make this project a success. And by that, I mean, not just act in it, but then go out and promote it heartily. That is so important, especially to independent productions. So, keep that in mind. That's why you should find stuff that you're truly excited about, because then it's not. It's not a problem for you, because you're excited to be a part of the project and you want to do everything that you can do to make that project successful. but that's what producers really need. It's not just
Mm.
the actor, but you need a champion for that project,
Right.
and you need as
Yeah.
many champions as you can get to help give that project wings. Well,
Right.
we've had a great conversation today, folks. I hope you've taken away some great nuggets of wisdom. It has been a pleasure, James, having you on our podcast.
Thank you.
We would definitely like to have you back. We definitely, when we get closer to series launch, we definitely want you to come back,
All right.
and then actually you would have had a chance to see some scripts,
Right.
with your character, and
Yes.
we could talk a little bit more about your character. But thank you for stopping by. Thank you for your kind words 2 years ago. Which and your kind words today, which keeps us going.
All right.
So, on behalf of Harv Lacko and our guest today, James Adam Tucker, I hope you've enjoyed this podcast, and we will see you next time. Bye bye for now. Thank you.